friends, it's Tracey from Tea Time with Tracey and Violet. I just got done lugging wood, so I got little wood chips on me, and I'm not having a hot cup of tea because I've drank a lot of tea today, and I'm going to have a nice cold carbonated sparkling water. This one's lime. And I want to talk about a book I finished, but I will do the courtesy of drinking it out of this festive teacup. Yes, yes. My light is doing funny things, so it might fluctuate. I can turn it up like super bright, but then it's like super bright. Let me just try it a little bit lighter, just a sec. Is that better? I don't know. I turned it up brighter. But anyways, yeah, I got the kids to bed, and I thought, it's December. Oh, I didn't show you this teacup, but I did show you it in my November wrap-up, which, by the way, if you watch that, I forgot to add a book to that. I read 13 books in November, not 12, but whatever. I wasn't going to go back and refilm it or add it because I was already done, but this is a festive, very festive. She has a secret weapon in there, like, pow, see that? Right in the kisser. She has gold up around the top and 2 gold rings down at the bottom. Gold, back gold, elbow gold, and gold right up on her shoulder pad. Like, she's all decked out for the holidays. And then there's her skirt, her pedestal. Gold all around the edges. The holly berries and bells. It's Yuletide. Queen Anne, fine bone china, England. And then number 3. So, yeah. Remember, it's just carbonated water, so I can chug-a-lug it. But I wanted to talk about Prisoner by Annika Martin and Skye Warner. And Annika Martin is also goes by Carolyn Crane. Carolyn Crane. AKA Carolyn Crane. Yeah. So it's the first of either one of these books that I've read. And this is a dark romance. This starts off with the heroine in this story. Her name is Abigail. She's all alone in the world. Her mother, she just grew up with her mother, who was kind of a drug user, and she had rotating boyfriends that were either alcoholics or drug addicts or abusive or whatever, creeps, slime balls, whatever, abusers. So she kind of had a rough growing up, and then eventually her mom passes away from a drug overdose, I believe, but this, you learn this all right at the beginning. It jumps on the scene with her in a federal penitentiary, going to work there as kind of a volunteer, a work placement, because she's in university, some sort of a English degree, and she's going to this prison to teach a creative writing session. She didn't choose to do this. She was assigned this. People in her class that she's taking, some go here, some go there. She was sent to the penitentiary. You know what I mean? She was sent to the pen. And Abigail, she's like early 20s, wears glasses, wears those little pencil skirts. She looks like a stereotypical librarian when you see them on TV shows. You know, very timid, and she always has her nose in a book because it's like her shield, and her glasses are her shield. So she's sitting in the lobby, and it's a cold, sterile place, and she really wants to get switched from working at this jail, because this is where the big bad people go. Anyways, her mentor from school encourages her to try to stick with it for a while. You'll end up liking it, because this is what her mentor ended up doing when she was younger. But Anyways, long story short, she ends up staying. She's hesitant because this class there's only room for 16 people and it was full. And then all of a sudden another day, another inmate shows up with the guard that convinces her, one more student, you can take one more student. And lo and behold, the student is the male interest in this book, Grayson. He whittled his way into getting into that class. He traded something with the guard to convince the teachers so he can go into this class. His objective of trying to get into this class was to try to get a message out to the people that is his family. So, a little blurb about Grayson. Him and a group of boys, they didn't know each other, but when Grayson was 5, he was abducted. He was in a foster home, and then he was abducted, and him with a handful of other boys were locked down there for 6 years. Again, this is quite dark. You'll have to look up some trigger warnings, but I'll try to tell you the ones that are right off the bat. But these young boys, he was 5, he was the youngest out of the boys, but they were all under the age of 10, were sexually abused, physically abused, and they were seriously locked down in the basement for 6 years. The only time they were allowed to come up is when people would come to play with them. They would be taken up one by one, given some drugs, washed up, cleaned up in different outfits, depending on who wanted what, and it was just torturous. So while these boys were down in the basement, they forged this family-like, because they don't have any families, and being so young, they only had each other. And again, you learn this. As the 6 years go on, you don't really get all the, 6 years worth of information, but eventually they bust out of this house and kill the people that are there, but that's only just a few people. It's much bigger than that, and they know it. So the people that were bigger than that, it's like the politicians of the city that they're in. It's ridiculous, all the way up to the governor. And fast forward, these guys are in their late 20s or something like that. They're grown men. They had been hunting down people that used to come to this house to abuse them and taking them out one by one. The boys that were in, like Grayson and the other boys, they have no identity, like at all. They've been erased off the face of the earth. So they banded together and stuck together and developed a home of their own. Not your typical home, but like a headquarters where they all stay together in a seedy part of town where nobody goes. And they're actually quite well to do now because of the criminal activity that they do to support their habits. They're not drug users or anything like that, but they go out and kill people that did them wrong, understandably so. So I'm telling you all this because Grayson is in jail. Why is he in jail? Because the governor finds out that these used to be young boys are out on the hunt for them, and he's trying to get a hold of them, get a wrangle on them, tamp them down, like back off or you're all going to jail. So they frame Grayson for killing a police officer, which, whether he did or didn't, but he didn't. Like, it kind of says that anyways. He was framed, and he was moved to a jail out of state, and he had no rights. Like, he couldn't write any letters, he couldn't receive any letters, he couldn't have any visitors, he had no phone calls, no nothing. So his idea of trying to get into this class is to try to get a message out through his writing via code or story-wise. So that's where his canoodling in to try to get into this class, because there's no other way to try to get a message out to help him, because he's in this jail for a couple of years. And he's like a big buff, big guy. He's not all tatted up, but he's a big guy. But still, 2 years, he's away from the only family he knows, and all the boys, I say boys, all the men, like they're all very skilled in different capacities. One of them is like tech savvy, if you know what I'm saying, and can hack this and do that. And eventually, a message gets out. Now, for me to read his story or anybody else to read it, it doesn't look like there's any kind of code or anything, but eventually you can kind of piece it all together and how they would have picked up what he was trying to say. And long story short, there's a jailbreak. And over that time, while Abigail was teaching there, she was working with this class for a few weeks, and she really felt like she was making a difference. She was going to take all of their creative writing together and put it in some sort of, publish it, just so their voices could be heard. And of course, his got picked, so that's how they got the message out. And the day of the very last day, that's when this jailbreak happened. And the guard that was there in the classroom goes to take Abby out to her car because she shouldn't be there because, all heck's breaking loose. People are fighting and all that stuff. She is out trying to get into her car, and guess who shows up? Grayson. So that's where their paths cross intimately. Like, he's in her class, that creative writing session, and you can feel the tension between those two. Like, you get her point of view and his point of view. She feels really uncomfortable with him there because she's curious about him, but she's intimidated by him. And of course, he's extremely handsome, and it's inappropriate of her. And he's the same way. Like, he's confident, though. He's not intimidated by her, but he's like smirking on the inside. He's very alpha that way. Like, yeah. And anyways, I like the 2 point of views, honestly. I do. So when there's the actual jailbreak and she's really confused, like, how did this guard know to take me out here and all that stuff? But hence the guy's bribery, all that stuff to get it organized. Those two end up taking off, and he's pretty much holding her hostage. Well, not pretty much. He is holding her hostage, and to get away in her vehicle. Now, she's worked really hard all her life to try to make something of herself because she came from nothing and she wants to try to do right, and she doesn't want to get tangled up with this. And it gets pretty dark. The story is fantastic, I think. There's a really good story in this. And there's a fair bit of smut in this, but it's not like all smut. That's more story than smut, which I appreciate. But there's certainly lines crossed. There's sexual assault. I'm just thinking of trigger warnings. There's, captive. Yeah, sexual assault's a big one. And although it's not brutal, it's still crossing a line. There's absolutely a line crossed, I think. In here. I mean, it all comes out in the wash because it's a fictional story. However, some of the things that went on in this book, yeah, not appropriate. No. There's, just inappropriate touching, intercourse. Like, for one example, she was incapacitated, like drugged, and you know what I mean? No. So trigger warnings. Not necessarily roofied, but just if anything triggers you, just make sure that you check any of the books that I ever talk about, please, because I might not remember everything. However, I really enjoyed this story. There was one big thing though, not big, one thing at the end of this story, and I'm not going to tell you specifically. When these two land to where their destination is, they go through a whole roller coaster of things, but they land and it's almost to the end of the book and they kind of have a bond together, and she understands what he needs to do. She doesn't know all the details of what happened to him when he was younger, but she kind of does, and she knows how important it is for him to do something. And she's like, yeah, I want to be there with him for it. So no matter what it is, I want to be there to support him because he isn't a waste of space. He is somebody, he isn't a monster. He is somebody, and he needs somebody there. What I'm talking about, I'm not going to tell you. However, this is a fairly dark book. Like, the story isn't overly dark, but the situations are quite dark. And when it comes time for him to dish out some justice, in my opinion, I wish the book had stayed completely dark, because Abby does something that really ticked me off and really knocked this back for me. I enjoyed the book. I still recommend the book, but she should have just stayed the hell out of it. It was none of her beeswax. Stay the flying flip-flop out of what he has to deal with, because of the crap he had to deal with when he was younger. Yeah, let him do what he needs to do. Don't try to rein him in. But I say that after he's done a bunch of stuff to her that he shouldn't have done. However, that was the one big hiccup. That's pretty bad, because I'm okay with the other things that went on. I'm not okay in real life, but it's a book. But I'm just like, Abby automatically became very annoying to me. Very meddling girlfriend-ish to me. Like, the book was dark. I wish I had stayed dark. Don't try to make it a little bit light. She should have been right on board with what he was going to do. And yeah, that was more of a trigger to me. I don't really have triggers, but that was more of a like, what the F? You know what I mean? Back the heck up. That was just a pet peeve of this book. But it is a good book. I do like it. There was just that one thing at the end. And if you read it, you might be on board with what she's doing. But I was not. I was just like, kick her out on her ass. She doesn't know what the heck she's talking about. And yeah. So, Prisoner. I just wanted to talk about it. I want to try to get videos up of books that I've read. And there is another book to this. It's called Hostage. And I'll talk about that one probably next, like in another video. I ended up reading Hostage before I read this. Hostage does have a few spoilers in it, not a whole bunch, but if you're going to read them both, read Prisoner first, then read Hostage. I just did it arse backwards because sometimes I just do things wrong, but it all comes out. So anyways, that's all I'm going to say about this. I would recommend it. It's a really easy read in the sense, like, I really like the layout of this book. The font wasn't small. So it looks like there's a lot of pages, but there's a lot of conversation and easy, not great big chunky paragraphs. And a fair bit of action. There's a lot of action in this, and I don't mean just sexual action. There's a lot of things going on in here. So it kept the story moving. This really only took me, I could have read this in a day if I didn't have other things to do. It took me a couple days to read just because. So anyways, with that, I'm going to say peace, love, and happiness today and every single day. Please like, share, and subscribe if you so choose. But if not, that's okay too. I still love ya. I still want all the happiness in the world for each and every one of you out there. I certainly do. I really, really honest and truly do. Yes, I do. So, oh, and I should say, I'm sitting behind or in front of our Christmas cozy. I did a little video on this. If you're wondering what a Christmas cozy is, I did make a video about that on my other channel. It's how to build a time machine, because this is a box I get from a furniture store. And I do this every year, and I call it the Christmas cozy. And I put Christmas lights in it, and a big deep freezer came in it. And it's here for the month of December, and then it poofs away January 1st. I have a house full of kids, and yeah, Christmas Cozy 2021. So if you're interested in it, I will put it down below if you want to watch it. You don't have to watch it, but that's what I'm sitting beside. So, all right, with that, I'm going to say have a good night or have a good morning, and I might see you tomorrow. Bye. Bloop.